Welcome into another edition of the UCR Coaches Show presented by Fire and Vine. Back here at Fire and Vine, live from the rooftop. It is week 5 of the high school football season. My name's Jacob Vincent. That's Noah McKay. Going to break down all of the action coming up a little later on this week. We'll go back and recap last week's action as well. And, of course, we'll bring you the UC Top 5, and we'll see where Noah was right and where Noah was wrong. As always, here on the UCR Coaches Show, please comment along with us. Let us know some games that you're looking forward to, maybe some games that you were at last weekend. And obviously the weather, it never really materialized until about Saturday when we actually got some rain across the Upper Cumberland. Comment along with us. Share the stream, like the stream here on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Glad to have everyone along for another edition of the UCR Coaches Show. We are fully here into, the middle of the season now. 4 weeks in. This is week 5. Almost exactly midway through.
It flies by. I want to thank all of our all-inclusive sponsors, the Real Estate Collective, Tee Up Baxter, Club Wyndham, Watson Chevy. Of course, everything's on the Watson Chevy UCR Media Network. The Quality Family, Sonia Brown with American Way Real Estate, Domino's, Nelson Trophy and Screen Printing, the Crouch Team with Highlands Lake Real Estate, of course, Fire and Vine, where we are here tonight. Beautiful night on the rooftop. Hall Sports and Outdoors and Hall Family Pharmacy, Eminette's Eagle Auction and Realty, and Swallows Insurance. It's hard to believe it is week 5. It's only 11 regular season weeks, and you get, we hope 5 weeks of postseason for at least somebody in the Upper Cumberland. So, flying by, we're going to be talking about basketball before too long, but we're getting to the meat of the schedule and some major region games happening around the Upper Cumberland this week, and a couple of big non-region games as well. Fun little mix before we get really into the meat of that region schedule starting next week.
We do have to apologize because this camera is very, very nice, which means you can very clearly see us, so we apologize for that. Usually it's a little bit grainier and makes us look a little bit better. But let's get right into it. Let's start with where Noah was right and where Noah was wrong, and we'll start with where you were wrong last week.
And listen, I've struggled with this because I've been so good. I've been on it. I'm still on a heater, but the York Dragons brought it to a screeching halt last week. Big win for York, and it really shouldn't have surprised us. We all picked Bledsoe County, I believe, in that game. Bledsoe County came in playing good, ranked top 10 in the state, still ranked top 10 above York. I digress. Regardless, but an early bye, and what did we say 2 weeks ago? The perfect time for the early bye for Coach Derwin Wright, with a lot of inexperience on his football team right now, to settle things down, to be able to look at some things outside of a fall break environment, actually be in the school, have some practices, be able to really study the tape, do some self-scouting, and what happens? They come out and look like the York Dragons of old. That's a big win for York, and quite frankly, changes the calculus for them, I think, over the remainder of this season, Jacob, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we preview this week's game, but I was very much wrong on the York Dragons.
Where you were right, quite a bit.
Yeah,
places, actually.
And really, I felt like we kind of had a good beat last week outside of that game of the week. And that the games, we picked them right. There weren't a ton of close games, but the scripts went pretty similar, right? Cookeville able to kind of lean on Lebanon and just methodically kind of churn that football game. It wasn't anything explosive. There were a couple explosive runs early, but it was just really business-like for Cookeville in that game. For Sparta in the game of the week, their ability just have the amount of weapons that they did to go into Stone, have a little bit of an edge in that department, an edge up front when it comes to the size, the way they were able to win that game. So I think we were really good on the scripts and the way these games went, because, of course, it's rigged. That's why we call it a game script. But the way that those games went, for the most part, outside of York, I think we were pretty right last week.
That's where Noah was wrong and where he was right. That means it is time for the UC Top 5. And I believe this is, a third week in a row that it's going to stay exactly the same.
Maybe 4.
And, I mean, listen, we've been kind of talking about it. Feels like this is a really, really good top 5, and I guess you could call it 5.5 because we've got an honorable mention in here again with the Gordonsville Tigers. So we'll go through it once more. Honorable mention, the Gordonsville Tigers, 4-0, now 1-0 in region play. They beat Joe Burns 48-14. DeKalb County still in this 5 spot, undefeated, 1-0 in region play, beat Watertown 45-27. White County moves to 3-1 and 1-0 in region play. They beat Stone Memorial 28-12. Macon County beat Smith County 49-6 and move to 3-1, 0-1 in region play. Cookeville undefeated 4-0, 1-0 in region play, beat a good Lebanon team 27-0, and Upperman tops Livingston Academy 48-0. They are 4-0 and 2-0 in region play. So no change. Once again, Upperman 1, Cookeville 2, Macon County 3, White County 4, DeKalb County 5, and Gordonsville at that honorable mention spot.
Yeah, a lot less movement than you see in the UC top fives when it comes to basketball. Less opportunities for movement, obviously only one game a week. But I think it's a good list. I think these are the 6 teams that have separated a little bit from the pack. I mentioned that last week. We could have some movement depending on what happens there at Turning Ford Field on Friday night between Gordonsville and DeKalb County in the Battle of the Tigers. So not to say there couldn't be movement. Obviously, big game for Upperman and White County this week. So this is another week. We had one back in week 3 where we said, hey, if there's a week where there's going to be movement on this top 5, it's probably that week. And then there wasn't. Everything kind of shook out the way we thought that it could when we put the list together. Chance this week for it to change, will it? I don't know. But as of this point, halfway through the season, I think these are the top 6 teams in the Upper Cumberland, and this is a top 5 that I'm really happy with.
This is the UCR Coaches Show presented by Fire and Vine. Jacob Vincent, Noah McKay. We're here live on the rooftop at Fire and Vine, and it is packed here on the rooftop. It's a beautiful evening. We've actually got our jackets on, about 65 degrees as we got started here, and they've got the heaters going as well, so you're not going to get too cold. You
nice.
Come out for some food and some drinks and enjoy some great atmosphere. Let's get into that DeKalb County game because obviously that is a big one between our honorable mention Gordonsville Tigers and the number 5 DeKalb County Tigers. Both those teams undefeated. They're squaring off this week.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think when the schedule first came out we thought this would be the case, but this is really both these teams' first test, Jacob. Smith County, they're very young, so that was a game that we thought would be tighter for both teams. It was not as tight for DeKalb County. They rolled in there and took care of business, but a tight game week 1 for Gordonsville. But they kind of cruised these two teams over some inferior opponents the past couple of weeks. Now that changes, right? DeKalb County having to go on the road. You know, if this was at DeKalb County, I think I'd sit here and say, yeah, pretty big advantage, but that's a tough place to go into there in Gordonsville to see if you can get a win. And for Gordonsville, an opportunity, right? And it's interesting when you compare these two teams. Obviously, two very different classifications, Class 1A, Class 4A. Gordonsville certainly has the makings of a team that is potentially a state championship contender, or at least a contender to go on a long run in that class in 1A. But DeKalb County showing themselves to be a very good 4A football team. So conventional wisdom is you take the 4A football team that's really good, but it's an opportunity for Gordonsville to show just how good they are. No shortage of stars either. The quarterbacks, Jordan Parker, Jay Foster, weapons around them as well. Really excited to see what happens in this game.
We're looking forward to that one coming up a little later on this week between the honorable mention and the number 5 spot in our UC Top 5. Let's break down that York Institute win. They beat Bledsoe County, previously unbeaten Bledsoe County, 20-7 on Friday. This game was supposed to be played on Thursday. Teams were ready to go. They warmed up. Bledsoe County is in Jamestown Thursday night, warmed up, ready to go 15 minutes before kickoff. Said we can't play, don't have officials. Bledsoe County had to go all the way back home.
And that is
make
not a
the
close
trip
drive.
all the way back up on Friday, play the game. So somewhat at a disadvantage there for the Dragons. Obviously worked out in their favor because they just get to go back home and then come back on Friday. But unfortunate that they weren't able to play the game on Thursday. But for the Dragons, able to get a big win after the bye week after starting the season 0-2.
Yeah, and I have it on good accord. That is not on York.
No, not
right.
at all.
There's been some people online saying this is York's administration, yada yada. Nope. I know what happened. I'm going to be nice and not say exactly what happened, but it's not on Bledsoe County either. So, but unfortunate situation and really just bad luck of the draw almost if you're Bledsoe County because it's not like going Livingston to Jamestown, right? It's not a close little, get back on the bus, 25 minutes, it's all good. So, but what York was able to do within the football game once they played it, very impressive. Good thing that the forecast ended up being wrong and it wasn't as much of a rain event, a little bit of wind, but I don't think the wind mattered very much in this game on Friday night, Jacob.
No, they kept it on the ground, and I mentioned big win for York, who now in their region have kind of maybe cemented themselves as the top dogs in the region again. I mean, you look at the other two undefeated teams, again, just 1-0 in the region. Oneida beat Wartburg 6-0. That game was 0-0 at halftime. Polk County beat Tellico Plains 24-13. Tellico Plains, a much improved team. That is who York gets on Friday. But really seems like before going into this game, we thought Bledsoe County was the team to beat.
Yeah.
They took care of business against Bledsoe County, and so now it's open for the taking for the region.
Yeah, absolutely. And hit that share button right now if you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube as well. What did we say last week? Must-win game for York and how different of a season you can have. Because if you lose to Bledsoe County, you're looking at a 1-6 start potentially. But now you beat Bledsoe County. You got a whole different outlook when it comes to this week against Tellico Plains, which we'll talk about, against Oneida, right, who did not look like world beaters at all against Wartburg. I'm going to give a little bit of the doubt and say something happened. Nothing that crazy should have happened for Oneida for that game to be close. So that changes how I think about Oneida. Polk County, I got no clue. I got no clue, right? So maybe that's the favorite. I have no clue. But from what I know, if you're Coach Wright right now, and not only that, you look at, like we have the past couple of years, the route through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, and you go, is this York team the same York team from a year ago? No. Do they have the potential now to make some noise given what they did a week ago? I think so. Because I entered last week, Jacob, thinking Bledsoe County was a third-round team. And York just hammered them.
Yep.
You can't take that away from them. You can't. It's a huge win for the Dragons.
Till the tape form, they rushed it 52 times for 200 yards. They also threw 4 of 8 through the air for just under 100 yards. 3 scores on the ground. The turnovers are still a problem, though. 3 fumbles, lost 2 of those fumbles, but defensively were much better. Had an interception defensively, forced a couple of fumbles, or recovered a fumble as well. Logan Pinnell still running all over the place. 20 carries for 142 yards. Blake Voiles had 2 rushing touchdowns. So it seems like defense they really needed to work on, especially after weeks 1 and 2. Now, again, they also faced passing offenses in those first 2 weeks, and they're probably not going to see a lot of those. But Bledsoe County did throw it a good amount in this game, but played much better defensively, and that's exactly what they needed.
Yeah, they did. And listen, Logan Pinnell's putting together a really nice start to the season. Even in the 2 losses, he ran well. In this scheme, you're going to have some fumbles. It's just you're going to put the ball on the ground sometimes with the different things you're doing.
When you run it 50 times
a
game.
You're going to put the ball on the ground. Now, it's about minimizing those, and Coach Wright's not going to accept any of them, but that's going to happen. That seems to be the bugaboo right now for York offensively. But you're right. GCA, that's a different type of ball game now. That's a completely different team from a year ago. Clay County's proven themselves to be a really solid 1A team. I like what York is putting together, and if they got a little bit of that Dragon swagger back on the defensive side of the ball, this is a dangerous York team. Now, they still don't have gimmies on the schedule. We'll talk Tellico Plains, Stone Memorial non-region, Friendship Christian non-region. A year ago, that was great because you were trying to prepare yourself for a deep run. This year, you may want to have a different team in there, but still, they're giving themselves a chance to compete, and it did absolutely. Last week changed the way I view the Dragons. No question about it. I think they're a completely different football team in my mind now.
Well, let's talk about their game this week. York Institute 1-2 on the season now, but 1-0 in region play. That is the important number. They travel to Tellico Plains, who this is a much different Tellico Plains team this year. 3-1. They did lose last week to Polk County. They are 0-1 in region play in Region 2 2A. This game will be on UCR 3 with Casey and Jack Bolton, presented by Beatty Lumber. Last year's game, 74-0 in Jamestown.
Yeah, it was Tennessee-Kent State.
It's probably not going to be that score again. Now, I mentioned Tellico Plains much better. They lost to both Sequoia and Sweetwater last year, have flipped those games, beat those 2 teams this year, so they've at least looked better at the start of the season, but this is still a winnable game for the York Dragons.
Correct. Those 2 are not York.
No.
Sequoia just fired their coach this morning, so that tells you how it's going there. Sweetwater, not world beaters. That being said, what Tellico Plains has shown is they have an ability to win football games. Yeah. So York's going to have to go and really completely put that last year blowout out of their mind. This is a different ball game, just like the Grace Christian game was, just like the Clay County game was. Tellico Plains is thinking this is a game they've got to flip. So, you're going a long way. I mean,
this game is starting at 7 Central, so it helps a little bit.
Is Tellico Plains even in the state of Tennessee? I mean,
barely.
It's way out there, right? So home field advantage matters there, I think, for Tellico Plains in this game. So it's a game where, York should win it. They should. But they're going to have to go take care of business. They're not in a position yet to just chalk it up, right? There's a couple of teams later on, so a couple of games we're going to say chalk it up. This is not that sort of game because of the opponent that you've got, the way that they're playing. They've got a lot more confidence than they had a year ago. I would be stunned if it's anything like it was a year ago because of Tellico Plains. They're not just going to lay down like what happened, and York made them do that a year ago. So different ball game, but I agree. This is a heavy favorite York team.
I think the defense steps up again. They continue on what they built upon last week against Bledsoe County, forcing a couple of takeaways. I think they do that again against Tellico Plains this week, and especially trying to set the tone when you're on the road to 2+ hours away, probably close to 3 hours actually, up in Jamestown. Haven't looked it up. Don't quote me on that. But a very long road trip, and I think a good opportunity here for the Dragons to get back to 500 and move to 2-0 in region play. I went with the Dragons this week. I got them winning 28-14.
How quickly things can change. I got York as well. I'll take the Dragons 34-14. And this actually I go 34-13. Missed extra point. Thanks to Michael for the 800 stars. It says UCR best sports coverage in the state. We certainly try. Stars a way you can support what we do here through Facebook. Appreciate that very much.
All right, let's keep it moving on. And, of course, anybody else can comment along. You don't have to send stars. You can just let us know where you're watching from. And
but
some
you can
games.
send
stars. If you want to, you're more than welcome to. But not needed. All right, let's talk about Livingston Academy and Upperman. They played last week on Thursday. Upperman won 48-0, and they got off to a quick start. Jumped out 7-0 in 3 plays, led 34-0 at halftime offensively. They looked tremendous. I think it was 8 of 8 for 214 yards passing for Braunston Chaffin. On the ground, they were great. Theo Brown had a catch in the flat on a screen pass and took it 80 yards right before halftime and had to make 3 men miss and then turned on the absolute jets after that. 5 different Bees found the end zone in this game. This Bees team bounced back in a big way, especially after the slow start against Macon County.
Certainly feels like Upperman had a come-to-Jesus moment last week in that first quarter against Macon County. They bounced back within that game, and think about what that starting offense has done since that time. Were they stopped on offense in that first half, Jacob?
No.
Okay, so that means after Coach Kane went for it on 4th and 4, except for one end-of-half drive.
They were 5 for 5 on touchdowns.
Which I do not count that end-of-half drive where you've got like 45 seconds in the football. So you take that one out.
Upperman had it this week, but they scored.
But that means they've scored touchdowns on every drive since.
Yep.
Watch out. We'll talk about the Sparta game coming up, but they're going to play good defense under Coach Kane. You know that. Blake Satterfield is there as the defensive coordinator. This offense has clicked. Braunston Chaffin picks up an offer from MTSU. Rocket chips going for that young man. Not a fair fight. And it's not going to be a fair fight for Livingston this week, right? It flips around for L.A., but on Friday night, that's the number 1 team in the state playing like the number 1 team in the state.
I do want to talk about their offense because that's something I've been noticing. We'll get into that when we talk about the high school football game of the week. Let's talk about Livingston Academy, though, because they are hosting Pickett County. Livingston now 2-2, 0-2 in region play, taking on Pickett County at 1-3. This will be on UCR 4 with Colin Castleberry and Chase Hoke, presented by the Overton County Farm Bureau. Livingston dropped 2 games in a row in region play. Coming into this game, Caden Weitzel, he's been playing some really good football. He's been a big bright spot for this Wildcats team, and I think the ball is going to be in his hands pretty heavily in this game.
Yeah, and listen, I'm going to commend Pickett County real quick. They got another win this year over Sunbright. They are vastly outsized on every Friday night, and they're going out there and play, and you can see what they're trying to do.
Goose told us that.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're doing good stuff.
Reverses, the wing T concepts, right? They're going out there and playing football the way it should be played. They're not just going out there and laying down. So I don't want anything I'd be saying to be taken as a slight towards Pickett County. That being said, absolutely a get-right spot for Livingston Academy. They should handle business quickly here. You mentioned Caden Weitzel probably touches the football a whole lot in this game. We don't know about some other things going on with the Wildcats, but they have the advantage pretty much everywhere on the football field. They're at home on Friday night. I expect a big win for Coach Hauser's team as they try to get back, right?
Yep.
We talked about Livingston and the dichotomy of their schedule.
Yeah.
Trousdale County Jenkins, and you follow that up, undefeated DeKalb County, undefeated Upperman. Now you get Pickett County. And then you
get York after that.
Then you get York.
That'll be a big rivalry.
Absolutely. Game. York in a big rivalry game. And that's one that I think we'll get to talk a lot about next week. That's a really interesting game on paper. But then they turn around and they get Macon County. You get Sparta, right? So it's a little bit up and down. But Livingston's got to get back to what they did the first 2 weeks, take care of business, keep building that confidence up, and realize that this is a process to get back to where they want to be.
Last year, Livingston won this game 49-0. Pickett County lost to Cumberland County last week 49-6. This is homecoming for the Wildcats as well. I'm going to go Wildcats 42-0 at home.
Yeah, I got Livingston rolling 56-0.
Cookeville, big win against Lebanon in the game that we were at on Friday in a Region 4 6A battle, 27-0. They get a shutout in region play. Start to the game was tremendous. They get a stop on defense, and then Thomas Johnson took it 68 yards to the house. They lead 7-0. Next play, Lebanon uses up 9 minutes of the clock on their drive. They go 14 plays, no points out of it. They have to punt it away. That's right. punted away. Cookeville able to take it 4 plays later to the house, and they lead 14-0 into the start of the second quarter. Really set the tone in this game. Seemed like they could have scored more, but you'll take a shutout victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got time, right? We're zipping through. We got a couple of big-time matchups.
Yeah.
So we're going to really get into the meat of this Cookeville game last week, Cookeville, Mount Juliet, Sparta, Sparta Stone Memorial, and, of course, the game of the week, Upperman Sparta. So buckle your seatbelts. Let's get into it. This is what we do. So make sure you hit share and interact in the comment section with us. I see some comments. Grandma Marsha's watching.
Always.
Absolutely.
Good old Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Jared's feeling very confident, as always. John's watching. For Gordonsville, Cameron Reed, he's with our friends over at 615 Preps. Massive game with Cookeville, Mount Juliet. We'll talk about it. But, yeah, it's interesting. You talk about that game. Very businesslike for Cookeville.
Yeah.
I think a really telling point in the game, and we were kind of talking about it on air, 4th and 1 on on the Lebanon 40-yard line. And that's kind of, you think, easy pickings for Cookeville. You run Blake Owen forward and get the first down. And Coach Hennigan punted it. And we both went, why don't you just go for that? And I think Cookeville felt like if they just don't make the mistake, they win the football game. And they were absolutely right about that. Just don't – they made one, muff punt. They locked it down there inside the 10-yard line and got the stop. That was gigantic. If Lebanon goes in and scores there, it's a one-score game going into halftime, and who knows what happens from there. Also, Lebanon, you've got a Division I football player on your offense. Deuce Edwards is for real.
Yeah.
Every time he touched the ball, 15 yards, 20 yards. And then they stop giving it to him for 8 plays in a row. And then they give it to him once and they get 20 yards. Unless there's something I don't know, I don't get that at all. And I think Coach Hennigan's saying thank you very much. Every time they gave it to anybody not named Deuce Edwards, thank you very much. Because nobody was doing anything in Cookeville outside of him. He was a problem. I digress. Back on point. They can't go in. There was a little play with your food mentality or play with your food. Could that game have been 42-0? Probably. But they were just not going to make the mistake.
If you'll remember that big time in the second half, they come out, they get the ball, they're marching down the field, and they get deep into Lebanon territory. And it was either the 3rd or 4th down. It was a big situation, and they had to burn 2 timeouts on the drive. They burned a second timeout. I think it was 4th and 3, 4th and 4, deep in Lebanon territory. And I said it at the time, if you burn this timeout and it doesn't end up in points, it's going to really hurt. It ended up in points. They were able to go up 21-0, and it obviously didn't matter after that because you're up by 3 scores. But that was a big turning point in that game because you got the ball at a halftime. You're up by 2 scores, and we were talking about it at a halftime. It really felt like Cookeville needed to go down and score just because, you're up 14-0, but felt like you should at least be up 21-0 already in this game. They were able to do that and able to get to the victory after.
Yeah, listen, there was never a time where I thought Cookeville was in danger.
No.
Maybe a twinge of it on that muff punt, but other than that, still felt like they were in control of the football game. So that's important. And again, we've talked about it a lot, but I got to see it in person in the season for the first time. They do what they do very well.
Yes.
That big offensive line runs forward. They mix up Thomas Johnson, who looks really good. He looks really, really good. And we talked about, I think, undersold him just a little bit. He looks like a top-tier back, which is a big weapon for them. And Blake Owen does what he does so well. He's Tim Tebow-esque, right? He doesn't have to throw it a whole lot. If he does, it's probably a shot play, but he's just getting yards. He's just turning yards. And on defense, he's a Saturday linebacker.
Yeah.
I mean, period. He's a Saturday linebacker. He sticks people great. Wes Hudson, really nice.
He was really good.
Player of the game.
He was our player of the game.
Nelson Trophy and screen printing player of the game. I am a little concerned in this region, and we'll talk about it coming up. I don't think Cookeville has some sort of secret hidden passing attack that we haven't seen. That's not coming, right? So they're going to have to be able to run for 4 yards a carry at least this week against Green Hill to have a chance of getting where they need to. And Cookeville has to win this region. If Cookeville wants to make the 3rd round, they've got to win this region. Nobody's beaten Oakland, no, at least not around here. Maryville, maybe. Houston beat them last year, maybe. Ravenwood, I think Ravenwood's really good. And I think that's the end of this sentence. I don't think anybody else is sniffing Oakland. But 3rd round playoffs would be a heck of a run. You win this week, you're on the way. So what could prevent Cookeville from doing that? Limiting other people's passing game if they get some downfield passing, which they are going to face this week in the form of Mount Juliet. And they're something, right? Sparta, I don't think Sparta's downfield passing attack it's not their MO. Their passing game is a lot of short stuff to the sticks, a little 15-yard ends. great, works, moves the chains, effective. Cookeville needs, I think, a little bit of that as they get into the teeth of this 6A schedule.
You mentioned Thomas Johnson rushed for 100 yards. Blake Owen rushed for 200 yards. They had 359 yards on the ground, and they've been doing it every week.
Love it.
You mentioned Blake Owen defensively. 8 tackles and a sack. Wes Hudson was really good defensively, really good offensively as well, blocking for both Thomas Johnson and Blake Owen. So a big win for Cookeville, 27-0. Sets up for a huge matchup this week with Mount Juliet, the top 2 teams in this region, and you can throw Green Hill in that conversation as well. Cookeville 4-0, 1-0 in region play. Mount Juliet 4-0, 2-0 in region play. This game will be on UCR2, myself and Josh Bowles. Presented by the CHS Chain Gang and 931 Sports Cards and Collectibles. I mentioned Cookeville, Mount Juliet, Green Hill, the top 3 teams, and I think they're solidified as the top 3 teams in this region right now. Last year, Mount Juliet won this game 38-14. Mount Juliet led 24-7 at halftime. Could not slow down the Golden Bears' offense. Cookeville's offense was okay in this game, just couldn't really get it into the end zone as much.
Blake Owen was hurt entering this game, so that's critical. Obviously, he's the key cog of this offense. That's important to remember. Listen, you said something that's absolutely true. Look, the second-round playoff game was huge, obviously, last year at Riverdale. But when you consider, certainly in the regular season, but I think when you consider the ceiling of this team this year versus last year's team, it's the biggest game in the Taylor Hennigan era. And it's a huge opportunity. Not in that, if they lose it, then there's trouble or any of that. It's just this is the first time.
Well, you're also coming off a win against Lebanon that beat you badly the last 2 years, 41-17 and 41-14.
Yeah, but if Cookeville finds a way to win this football game, they're a top 10 team in the state. They're 5-0, and you start to look at the schedule and you go 10-0 is on the board.
Yeah,
for a team that won one game 3 years ago.
Yep.
Like you go 10-0 is absolutely on the board with this football team. So now, but if they don't compete. Right? You can flip it the other way. You can say if they don't compete, then 6-4 is on the board all of a sudden, right? So this is a big pivotal game for Cookeville in that respect, but a gigantic opportunity for a Cavs team and a Cavs program that has earned the right to play in a big game. They have put the work in from the ground up, this coaching staff and this core of players. You think about where Blake Owen was. Blake Owen's first start, he was a freshman. I was there. It was a Wednesday night in Shelbyville, and they got destroyed. And he was just a little skinny freshman out there, and you went, man, I think he's got some tools.
Not a little skinny freshman.
I know, and you go, man, I think he's got some tools, but he's got nothing out there right now. He is not that anymore. And you go from that moment where they won one game that year to now this, and their opportunity welcoming in a top 10 Mount Juliet team with a real chance to win the football game. Not a here's what's got to go right for them to pull an upset. They have a real chance to win this football game. That's a credit to the program. It's a credit to the coaches and the players.
This is going to be one of the first teams that Cookeville has faced that can throw the ball down the field. And now it's not the only thing that they're going to do. When you look back at what Mount Juliet has done this season, you go back to the Gallatin game, which this was a very rain-heavy game, so they couldn't really throw it. Had 2 different guys rush it for 200 yards in the game. A lot of fumbles, a lot of penalties. They will throw it, though, against Warren County in their game last week that they won 44-0, had 3 touchdown passes in the first 13 minutes. So they're gonna be able to mix it up through the air and on the ground. One thing that I noticed in looking just at their schedule, haven't played anybody.
Nobody.
Gallatin is a good football team, but they shut them out. Now that's the big thing is they've only had 14 points scored on them this season in 4 games,
and
which is very
Hunter's
impressive.
Lane, and I think it was garbage time. So to your point, the 4 games they've played, their opponents have a combined 2 wins.
Yeah, Cane Ridge, Hunters Lane, Gallatin, and Warren County.
2 wins.
Yeah.
And neither of those wins are very good for either of those 2 teams. So, those 2 teams with 1 win, everybody else winless. That being said, right, in this conversation we've had we have a lot of teams. If you're flat out better than the other team, what do you have to do? You got to go take care of business. And they have certainly taken care of business.
Absolutely.
I don't know what happened last year with Mount Juliet at the end of the year. The wheels just blew off the wagon. They had some injuries, but some other stuff. But Mount Juliet is a program, and we talk about this sometimes with some of our programs up here that have earned the benefit of the doubt. I thought they were going to be really good entering this year. They are really good. I mean, this is a really good football team coming to Cookeville on Friday.
Well, and one of the backs that ran for 100 yards in that Gallatin game is a freshman as well. So they've got some really young talent in this game, along with Division I quarterback, along with a back that is big and he can run the ball. They've got a kicking game, too. They can kick field goals. They're going to kick it deep on kickoffs. That's something they can use to their advantage in this game. But that was the big thing that stood out to me was this is the best team that Mount Juliet has faced this year as well. So it's kind of going to be really fun between Cookeville and Mount Juliet, where two best teams that each other has faced this season.
Yeah, and I do think that there's been some discounting statewide to the way Cookeville is built and their offensive line. Their offensive line can go with anybody.
Yeah.
I mean that, anybody. And I'm including Oakland. That is not my concern with Cookeville. Cookeville's O-line can go. Like, that's a problem that Mount Juliet's going to have to deal with. This is a bona fide, great 6A offensive line. Now, there's some other places that can't go with a team like Oakland, and we're going to see if they can go with a team like Mount Juliet or not on Friday night. But Cookeville's offensive line, I think, has an ability to have some success in this game. And that's the interesting thing is, you know, we're going to talk about the weapons Mount Juliet has. Cookeville's got some weapons there. Thomas Johnson's coming, and he's running with bad intentions. And Blake Owen, it's a funny commentary line you made last week. I mean, just trucked a kid in the hole, and he hit a nasty little kind of hezzy juke on the outside as well. So you look at Cookeville and you go, no passing game, and I do think that could be a problem. Right? Cookeville has to have this script go the right way. They can't get down 21 points.
Yep.
They are not built for that. Right? They can't. 14 is going to be a little. They got down 14 to Sparta, but it was early enough that they kind of didn't have to get out of their script, and they had a big answer drive when they went down 14-0. They can maybe survive that, but this is not a team built in the second half to be chasing points. So they've got to have the script go their way. It'll be interesting to see how multiple they are in the run game. This is not about to turn into the greatest show on turf. They're not about to hitting 5-step drops and airing it around the yard. But they've got to be multiple in the run game. Some sweeps, some counters, obviously a ton of power is what you're going to see, and running downhill, zone runs. So can they mix up that run to keep Mount Juliet off balance? And then defensively, the passing game is a concern, but if they can't slow down the run for Mount Juliet, forget about it, pack it up, and go home.
Cameron Reed making a good point in the comments. Deuce Edwards is not playing for Mount Juliet this year. Obviously, faced him last week against Lebanon, so that helps a little bit. But he said it in his comment too. We got a couple of other dudes there on that team, and it's gonna be a really fun matchup this week in Cookeville. Homecoming as well as it is for a lot of the teams around the area and around the Upper Cumberland. So the environment is going to be tremendous. It was a couple of weeks ago with White County. It's going to be just as good with Mount Juliet, who's going to travel well down I-40 as well.
And I'm certainly not predicting that if Cookeville loses this game, they're going to lose 4 games. The point is, you can swing it either way, right? You can say, hey, if they win this game, and I probably will say, if they win this game, they're going to go 10-0. If they lose it, I think at this point, anything less than 8-2 would be a surprise for me. Outside of the Mount Juliet and Green Hill games, that'd be a surprise. Gallatin, it's going to be a ticked-off Gallatin team.
Lincoln County's a little better.
Lincoln County's better. I just don't think they're going to be able to come in and win. So, but if you want to be a hater, you could get to 4 losses. You can get to 4 losses with anybody. Give me 5 minutes, and I can make the argument. I'm not making that argument. The emphasis is the swing that you can have, and really, if you win. If you lose, I think everyone's going to go, okay, Mount Juliet's really good. On to the next.
Yep.
If you win, though, people are going to go, wait a second.
Yep.
What's going on in Putnam County?
I think the big thing is we want to see them compete.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do it last year, 38-14, got down early, were unable to come back, didn't do it against Lebanon last year as well. Beat Green Hill, so they've got that under their belt.
They caught fire. After this game last year, Gallatin game happened, they come back, and then really since then have never looked back.
Well, and Blake Owen was back as well.
And even in the playoff
game,
it's huge. And even in the playoff game that they lost, they were competitive against a really good Riverdale team, different officiating crew. Maybe they win the game. I digress. So that's why I said they've earned the right to play this game. They've earned the right to have the benefit of the doubt entering this game that they can win it. They're just going to have to they're going to have to do what they do, right? And we've seen it happen before. They just got to go out there and run the football effectively, and it's probably not going to be 51 yards on the first carry or 68 yards and 41 yards on the next. Down the field methodically, that business approach they took last week. Curious to see another thing. What happens this week if it's 4th and 1 on the 40? Last week you just kick it and you say, hey, you play your game, you're going to win. This week against the team of caliber of Mount Juliet, I think it's probably a longer thought when you've got Blake Owen before you kick that football away. Those are the differences between a game like last week and a game like this week for Cookeville.
All right, let's pick them. Who are you going with?
This is one that I'm absolutely reserving the right to change.
Yeah, this might change.
I got to watch more Mount Juliet. Just straight up honest.
Same.
I got to watch more Mount Juliet. I really want to pick Cookeville. I think Mount Juliet's really good. Like I think Mount Juliet right now, you say pick the team that loses to Oakland in the 3rd round, they're probably the team I pick. So as of right now, I'll take Mount Juliet 28-21, but that could change by Friday on the expert predictions column.
I'm going Cookeville 34-28. So close one, a little bit more higher scoring.
You are beloved now.
We'll see if the Cavaliers can put up 34 points on that Mount Juliet defense. But again, it's the best team that Mount Juliet has faced this year. That'll be on UCR2. Myself, Josh Bowles, will be on the call of that coming up on Friday. White County beat Stone Memorial 28-12 on Thursday night for our high school football game of the week. And what was a fun one. It was a windy one.
Fun adjacent.
White County got up early. Seemed like they were going to run away with the football game, and it kind of stayed fairly close for the rest.
Speaking of playing with your food a little bit, that happens some. Now, very interesting, White County comes out 5 wide, and again, a lot of 5-yard routes. They hit the first drive for White County, 3rd and 8. Little post in from Darvon Richmond on the outside, puts it on him. Great pass from Trip Pinion, breaks one tackle, and he's gone. Big swing in the game, right? So, White County, too many horses in this game, I think. Stone, again, kind of like the Cookeville game, pretty good account for themselves, just a little bit outmanned. And they battled in, and I'll tell you this, Noah Potter's a tough young man because I've never seen a team blitz as much as Sparta blitz.
Gage Stevenson had 4 sacks.
Now, maybe a fullback every once in a while for Stone could have kind of helped, but nope. I mean, Gage Stevenson with 4 sacks. JoJo Dowell just off the edge, flying in. And you know, there's a big point in the game where Sparta's rolling. They're up a couple of scores, and, I mean, Potter got stuck. I mean, just crunched. Next play, they're coming right after him. He sits in there, dot to a kendo down the seam. They go in and score. And so Stone was able to keep it interesting. Similar, though, with that Cookeville-Lebanon game, never really felt like Sparta was in danger there. Stone's kicker was hurt, so they had to go for 2. That put them kind of chasing points a couple of different times on their 2 scores. Really impressed with Sparta's defensive line, especially down in the red area. There's a couple of times Stone gets it to the 30. They got it inside the 10, if not the 15. At one point, Sparta gets the stop, right? So, you know, they got some big old boys. A.J. Hunt, that's an impressive young man. He is an impressive young man. And a good bounce back for Sparta, right? They flipped it. That was the question. Could they get – last year it spiraled after the Cookeville loss. This year it didn't. They answered the bell nicely, go on the road on a short week, get a win, get an extra day to prep. But I think everybody understands the equation has changed. And now I feel pretty confident having seen these teams. I feel like I know what the top 4 is in Region 4, 4A. And I think Stone Memorial has the potential to play spoiler. Right, their game against DeKalb could be a win-and-in game. We'll have to wait and see. You know, their game against Upperman and Macon, they're good enough to where you can't sleepwalk into the game. So, you know, they're not going to be favored over those teams, but they are good enough, and they have enough weapons, especially with Maddox Akendo, to put the fear of something into some of these Region 4, 4A teams.
Trip pass for over 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns. You mentioned Darvon Richmond had a couple of nice catches, 6 catches for 137 yards. Trip on the ground, 125 yards and a touchdown.
They didn't run him a ton.
Yeah.
And reasons for that, but they didn't run him a ton. It's funny, I go, I'm kind of surprised they haven't run him a ton. It's in the Goose's highlight reel. And then, like 2 seconds later, he pulls it around and goes and scores from like 65 yards out. So, you know, Trip is Trip. He is the preeminent player in the state. I mean, his production, I don't know who can touch it in Sparta. When it's going to be done, his total career stats are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's not anywhere close to done yet. So we kind of talked about it last week. You can't just gloss over how incredible Trip Pinion is. He is on a different planet, and teams know you got to find a way to slow him down, and they can't. The passing stats were there. Again, it's not a he threw a couple of deep shots that they didn't quite connect on. He's got the arm strength, but it's still run the football, mix up the running game, 5-yard curls.
At least makes you respect it.
Post in, right? It's dangerous enough to where if you're just crashing the box, they can beat you over the top. But it's still all about number 3 for Sparta.
All right, let's talk about the high school football game of the week. Upperman at 4-0, 2-0 in region play, traveling to White County in Sparta, 3-1, 1-0 in region play. Let's be on the Facebook page, YouTube channel, Noah McKay, Jeremy Towson, and Hallie Ledbetter, presented by Gentry's Power Equipment. You've already tabbed it as the biggest game in Sparta history.
Yeah, I think it is. Listen, you know, the second-round playoff game, obviously huge. But that team wasn't capable of winning a state championship. They just weren't there yet. You win this game, right? We said it before the Macon County game. Winner leaves as the favorite to win a state championship. Winner of this game leaves as one of the favorites. And if you're Sparta, very similar to what we talked about with Cookeville, you've earned the right to have this game and to have a real chance in this game. You welcome in the number 1 ranked team in the state into what I'm sure will be a totally quiet Warrior Stadium. It's going to be a madhouse. I mean, you come to this game, but you're going to have to get there early. You're going to have to get there early and prepare to walk.
Bring your fans.
Absolutely. It's going to be hot, and it's going to be crazy. So come to the game, but a gigantic game, right? And for Sparta, a game, and really this game and the making game for Sparta last year, they ended up being one-possession games, but they were down 21-0 in both those games. You do that this year, it's over. I mean, it will be over. This is not last year. So we'll talk about all of it. We're about to get into the teeth of it. But no question about it, in my opinion, certainly regular season, biggest regular season game in the history of that stadium.
Well, the game last year, it was a really fun one. 28-21 was the final score. It was 21-0 at halftime. Upperman led in Baxter. And in the fourth quarter, White County and Trip Pinion, they just went full backyard football. He was running all around the yard. They scored 21 points. A couple of tremendous catches by Antonio Purvis and Darvon Richmond in that fourth quarter as well. Made it a football game. Upperman gets a score late to extend their lead and end up winning by that touchdown. But a tremendous football game a year ago, and a game that we didn't think White County really had, I wouldn't say a chance, but didn't think it should be that close.
Entering that game. Yeah. And then at halftime, we're like, where are we going to eat? I mean, it was, and they did a great job doing what they can do. When you got a guy as dangerous as Trip Pinion, and there is some validity into that backyard football stuff, because what is being preached all week if you're the opponent of Sparta? Watch three. Don't over-pursue. You over-pursue, he's gone. And so you're just sitting there spying, and he's got time, and he's making the D lineman miss and wiggling around. And that's a long time to cover in the secondary. So it doesn't surprise me that they have success when they have to go to that backyard football. I don't think they want to do that as much this week. And it's interesting, because it feels like Upperman had their fall asleep moment in the first quarter against Macon, which means I would be prepared, if you're Sparta, for the best version of Upperman that they've got coming into your house. Because you look at the rest of the slate for Upperman, and absolutely with a nod towards DeKalb County, like I said with Cookeville, they win this game, they're going 10-0. They just are, again, right? So, and if they do that, they're going 13-0, or 12-0 at least, before they get into the third round of the postseason. So this is kind of the last stand for a team to knock off Upperman in the regular season in this region, in my opinion. Again, I think DeKalb County is good enough to beat them on a good day for DeKalb and a bad day for Upperman. I think the same for Stone Memorial, but it's just not likely, because I think Upperman had their fall asleep game. Sparta is going to have to change it up in the way we saw Macon County change it up, right? They come out, and it's Gabe Borders at quarterback, and they have some success. Upperman starts keying in on that. It's spread option with Gammon at the quarterback position. They start keying on that. It's wing T, right? So you have got to be multiple. They have to. And so I think you could see some 5-wide stuff for Sparta. Then you could see them bring it in tight with 2 tight ends and try to run downhill. You have to change it up, because if this Upperman team knows what's coming, forget about it. They're just too talented. They are maybe the most talented top-to-bottom roster in the state in the classification. So, but Sparta has shown the ability to change it up. We didn't see that 5-wide spread stuff as much against Cookeville as we did against Stone Memorial. So they have that bag. Coach Sloan there, the play caller, is going to have to get in that bag offensively on Friday night.
Let's talk about this Upperman offense. And I had it on my sheet before the game last week, and I probably have it in my bag over there. They're averaging right around 40 points per game on offense. They don't do that normally.
No, nobody does.
I mean, this is an Upperman offense that they've got Bronston Chaffin, who his efficiency is off the charts, throwing it for 20 yards a pass. You've got Ethan Paulk running the ball. Bronston Chaffin, he runs the football pretty well. We know that defense is really, really good. We know that's where they hang their hat. White County's defense is going to have to be ready for this offense.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting, because rightfully so, we've talked a lot about the weapons that Sparta has. This Upperman team has got weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, let's take one you mentioned earlier. Theo Brown. We don't talk very much about Theo Brown.
6'3", 200.
Put Theo Brown on another roster up here, and how much do we talk about Theo Brown? He's the best player on 90% of teams. And we're like, oh, yeah, they got Theo Brown, too. This kid can fly. I mean, he can cover. He can catch. He's wise around the football. Carmine Phillips, Branson Turnbow, Ethan Paulk, Bronston Chaffin, Colton Johnson, This is a load. And
you can just keep going.
And the quarterback is 6'4.5" and 230 pounds and can throw it 60 yards.
We saw it last week.
This is listen, I know, I get it. There's Upperman fatigue for people. Like, all you do is talk about Upperman. Like, listen, they've lost one region game in 7 seasons. I'm just analyzing it. They are the creme de la creme. They have been. Does that mean Sparta can't win the football game? Absolutely not. But they're going to have to come prepared because this is a team with weapons all over the field. You can't just key in on Ethan Polk. You can't just key in on stopping the quarterback run game because that kid can drop back and dice you up through the air. They have deep ball, medium routes, short routes, rollouts, quarterback run. And if you're taking away the pass, Coach Kane's going to say, okay, we're going to run the ball 55 times, right? That's why they are so dangerous. And not to mention that a lot of those guys turn around and play defense. They don't even have to play Bronson Chaffin on defense. So it's the best team, in my opinion, that Sparta has faced so far this season. They're going to have to be ready for it. And it's certainly with a nod to Cookeville when it comes to best team. I get it. Save your comments. I don't want it. It's fine.
They're 1-2.
They are the most multiple.
We know they're 1-2.
They are the most multiple team that Sparta has faced offensively so far this season. And their ability to do it through the air and on the ground, which, to your point, I remember 2 years ago sitting here with Justin. He's like, they got to find a passing game. Government has to find a passing game. Well, sorry, everybody. They found a passing game.
It's here.
Yep, it's here.
We saw it. Branson Turnbow, second play of the game against Livingston Academy, 50 yards through the air on the money in that one, and then they were able to get it into the end zone.
He's good for he's hitting this like one catch a week thing, and it's a huge shot just all the time.
He's averaging 27 yards a catch.
And I think Carmine Phillips is really good.
Yeah.
Listen, we're going to be talking all week about the weapons. We talked about Sparta's a little bit earlier. Upperman's here. Really, another matchup I'm really interested to see. This Sparta defensive line, which has really controlled the majority of games.
Yeah, they're big.
Struggled a little bit with Cookeville's run game, but Cookeville's so big. Upperman's line is nowhere near as big as Cookeville's is. Can Sparta's defensive front, they're not going to be able to blitz as much. Now, I think you're going to see some creative pressures. Coach Foster's going to draw them up. But can that front get pressure and hold blocks and allow those very good linebackers, Isaiah Kelso leading the charge. Gage Stevenson was great last week, player of the game. Nelson Trophy and screen printing player of the game. They've got to be able to block up those linemen so they can get Polk and Chaffin on the ground. And you have to gang tackle, right? Macon County had a huge play in that game. It's 4th down and 2. Upperman goes for it. They hit Polk in the backfield. He gets away. He gets enough yards. It's a 1st down. Game changes. That was when it was 14-0. There's a couple of big plays in that game. If somebody gets to him in the backfield, several have to get to him in the backfield. And really goes both ways, right?
Yep.
Trip Pinion.
Yeah.
You ain't getting him down with one guy.
Yeah.
You better get there with several. So no shortage of premier players. That's why it's our game of the week. I mean, they're really all over the place.
Let's pick the score.
Oh, gosh. You go.
I'm thinking it's a similar script to the Cookeville game a couple of weeks ago. Defenses maybe not as good this week just because there's so much firepower offensively on both sides of the ball. I'm going 42-35. Upperman wins by a score on the road.
This is a very interesting game because it's either we know who the favorite is, but they're on their journey. The drumbeat continues to move on for Upperman, or it's the Sparta has arrived. Right? One of those two is the end result of this game. I'm always very hesitant to pick against Trip Pinion. And I think this is a team uniquely positioned to give Upperman some problems because they can match up pretty well on the outside with their weapons, right? You've got enough speed to where they can't, Carmine Phillips and company and Branson Turner aren't just going to run past you. And conversely, though, Gage Stevenson and company, they're going to have to, all of them are going to have to run good routes. It's not just, hey, we're faster than you,
There's
go run by.
on both
There's
sides.
speed everywhere. It's such an interesting game. That being said, I'm picking Upperman. I'm sorry. I've said it. I think they're the best team in the state. They're my number 1 ranked team in the top 10. In my poll, they're number 1 on the UC top 5. By the way, Sparta's in my top 10 as well. They should be. I tried to tell people they should be ranked, so don't message me about that. I promise you I did my best. I got the receipts to prove it. But I think Upperman wins, and I think Bronston Chaffin is a big difference maker in the ball game with his ability to distribute the football all around the yard and that pressure that it puts on a defense. But if you tell me Trip Pinion runs for 350 yards and Sparta wins, I'm not betting against you. I can tell you that right now. So I'll take Upperman to win the game 35-21 right now. The score could definitely change before Friday.
All right. That's it.
It's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a really good game.
I think so, too. That's our high school football game of the week on UCR, on UCR 2, Cookeville and Mount Juliet. UCR 3, York takes on Tellico Plains, and on UCR 4, Livingston Academy gets Pickett County. We have volleyball coming up on Thursday. Cookeville is at White County Volleyball. That'll be a fun one that we are looking forward to. And then we will have the UC game day morning, Friday morning. Get you ready for all the action and let you know what we're looking forward to.
The comments crack me up. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. He said, no need to apologize. No, a good pick. Chris, now this is a good point. I'm sorry to cut you off.
You're fine.
He said Upperman is better than last year, and then Derek responds, so is Sparta.
Yep.
I agree with both of those. Now, the problem is if you're Sparta, Upperman being better than last year means they're going to win a state championship. If Upperman's better than they were last year, they're going to win a state championship. Sparta's trying to get in that echelon. Opportunity this week for Sparta to arrive on a statewide level. We'll see.
So we'll have our 4 games Friday night. Then we'll have the End Zone show. And everything should be Friday night this week. So shouldn't be moved
That was
up.
weird.
It is going to be warm. It's going to be very warm. Now, obviously, the sun goes down a little quicker now, so that helps. But it's going to be very warm during the day. Drink a lot of fluids. And then come out to the games Friday night. If you can't make it out there, we'll have a broadcast for you. And then we'll have the End Zone show about 10:30, 11 o'clock later on right here on UCR. You got anything else?
I'm really excited. These top 2 games especially. They're legit.
Looking forward to DeKalb County, Gordonsville as well. We'll be keeping an eye on that. And once again, we appreciate you tuning in. The UCR Coaches Show presented by Fire and Vine. Again, we're out here every Tuesday. Come on out. Get some food. Get some drinks. Heckle us if you want to. We'll see if you can break us.
I get a lot fewer heckles in person than I do online. It's just weird how that worked out. I don't know. I'm sure there's no reason for it. It's weird how that happens.
But we do appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, volleyball on Thursday at White County, Cookeville, White County volleyball, football on Friday, and then we'll do it all again next week. Appreciate everyone tuning in for the UCR Coaches Show presented